Hi, my name is Paul Grogan, and in this gaming rules video I am going to be giving you my quick and dirty review of Forum Trajanum, designed by Stefan Feld, published by Hook and Stronghold games, and it came out at Essen Spiel 2018, which is where I got my copy. I believe it's on general release soon. This video has been recorded in December 2018. So here I am going to tell you a little bit about what I think about this game. Now, for those people who know me, you will know that I am a massive Stefan Feld fan. He is one of my probably top 3 favourite designers. I don't really like to order them when it gets that close to the top, but I have played most Stefan Feld games and they are one of my favourite type of game. I just love his games. So it's probably no surprise that I like this one. So let's get that out of the way straight away. My favourite Stefan Feld game until now has been Trajan. It used to be Castles of Burgundy, then I moved on to Trajan. This right now is my favourite Stefan Feld game, and I don't know whether it's just because it's all new and it's all shiny and it's exciting, but right now I am preferring playing this one to all other Stefan Feld games, and I like a lot of them. So if you are a Stefan Feld fan, you're probably going to like this game. It's a no-brainer to get it, in my opinion. And if you're not a Stefan Feld fan, I would at least take a look at this one. So it plays 2 to 4 players. The playtime as printed on the box is 30 minutes per player, and that is a realistic time once you've played a couple of games. There's a lot of decision points in this game, and that's going to mean that your first games are going to be a learning game, and after that, 30 minutes per playtime is good. Now, I've played this 2, 3, and 4 player. Let's go back to Castles of Burgundy for a minute, because I'm going to say something now which most people disagree with, and that is Castles of Burgundy, for me, is not a great 2-player game. And I know a huge number of people say it's a fantastic 2-player game, but my issue with Castles of Burgundy is in a 2-player game, not all the tiles come out. So you might start collecting sheep and then no more sheep come out for the rest of the game. Whereas in a 4-player game, pretty much everything comes out. So let's go back to this game. It's 2 to 4 players, and I think it plays really well at all player counts. It doesn't have that issue, which I think it's an issue, but many don't. What happens is the actual board is slightly different size depending on the number of players in the game. So this is the board here for 4 players. With 3 players, what is it you do? I think you take off, you take off one of these, that's it, and you just put it like that. And with 2 players, I think you just play with 3 of them like that. So so the size of this board changes, but the dynamics of the game change as well, because one of the key mechanics in the game is there is a little bit of a mini draft with these tiles. So I don't really cover rules much, but the rules are actually really simple in a way, in that on your turn, based on the street cards that get drawn, you will be taking 2 tiles from your board, okay? So you will take 2 tiles, one from the row or the column as indicated by the street card, and then the other one accordingly. And then you'll look at those 2 tiles and you will pass one of them to the player to your right. And yes, it goes to the player to your right. Naturally, everybody wants to go left, but no, you pass it to the player to your right. And then you will have been passed a tile from the player to your left, so you now have 2 tiles, and one of them you choose which of those 2 actions you want to do. Now, in a 2-player game, that means you and your opponent are basically, it's a real head-to-head game, because it's like, oh, I really don't want him to have this one, but oh, she's going to give me that one. And the thing is, the way that this bit works is really clever. It always goes to the right. It doesn't alternate, and whatever you do, don't alternate it. Don't think, oh, round 1 will go to the right and round 2 will go to the left, because your tile mix has a certain amount of stuff on there. It's an exact number of things that's on there, and every player has exactly the same tiles. So, and it's important for game balance that, you are only passed tiles from one player, because essentially there's a tile with like 2 coins on it. If you were to alternate the passing, then you might get passed that from the left and then again from the right, and that wouldn't work. So anyway, the 2-player game does work really well and is very much of a head-to-head. The 2-player part of the game where you're playing on this board isn't as interactive. You've got less choices. I'm just going to touch a little bit on this one here, because I'm a believer, and again, contrary to some people's opinion, that variability does increase replayability. For me anyway. If this game was always exactly the same board setup, and there are also these variable scoring conditions that come out at the start of the game, you've got a whole pack of cards, and you pick a 1, a 2, and a 3. And that's decided at the start of the game. So every game you go into is like, right, well, in this game, we're going to score points based on that. So that's going to make me play a different way. And I would happily play this game, many times, one after another, because the different scoring tiles there will make you play it a different way. That, for me, is variability that increases replayability. Anyway, so this bit, you basically deal out these tiles at random, and they're two-sided, and it's only a little thing, but the size and the shape of these areas and the colours and everything else, that does change a little bit what happens there. Anyway, right, let's go on to some of the other things I like about it. I mentioned that the rules are fairly simple, in that the cards are dealt, each player then takes 2 tiles from their board, you pass one to the right, you get given one from the left, you choose which one of them to resolve, and they've basically got stuff on them. So this one is a grey builder and a blue worker, right? Okay, and then the tile goes face down there. And then you may build one building. And there's 12 rounds in the game, divided into 3 eras. And that's what you do. It's very simple. But there's so much choice in this game. There is so much. And the decision of which tile you take. The first time I played it, I was just like, oh, whatever, I'll just take a tile from here. But the position of the tile that you take is important for so many reasons. First of all, I mentioned these end of round scoring cards. Well, this one here, for example, is points for a coloured building between 2 grey buildings. Okay, so straight away, you've got to look at your board and think, right, if I'm going to score for that, which tiles do I want to take off? Also, there's only 12 turns in the game, so you only really get to build 12 buildings. There are bonus building actions, but I won't mention them. I just did. So if you've got 2 spaces next to each other, you can build one of these double buildings. So that's effectively, you've got 2 buildings for 1 action, which is efficient. But that means you need to have 2 spaces on your board that are next to each other. So you've got that to think about as well. And also, one of the scoring things in the game is that you will score for different types of grey buildings in each of the rows. So when you're picking up a tile, you've got to think, oh God, where am I going to take it from? Now, another thing I love about this game is the amount of mitigation. You might think, well, hang on a minute, Paul. You just said you draw 2 cards at random from the deck, and everybody gets these 2 cards, and then everybody takes a tile from that row. Well, these are tribunes. If you spend a tribune, there's various uses for these, but if you spend a tribune, you can take any tile you want. There's mitigation, even in the tile that you get. So that's really good. There's so much mitigation. The assistants, if you play an assistant with a worker, it can change that colour worker to a colour that you want. So there are so many ways in the game that you can manipulate what you've got. It does increase the number of choices, and you will find the first time you play it, or if you play with slow players, that they will be thinking a lot, not just about what tile they're going to take, but then what building they build, what they do, and everything else. Now, Stefan Feld is famous for point salad style games. If you don't know what they are, they basically are, there's dozens and dozens of ways you can get points, and it's kind of like a point salad is what it calls them. This game is a point salad, but you only score points at 3 points in the game. Well, mainly, there's building monuments, but... So there are 3 times in the game when there is scoring at the end of each of the rounds. But when you do a scoring, there are 5 different ways that you score, okay? So yes, it is a bit of a point salad. You get points for this bit, you get points for this bit, you get points for your cranes, you get points for something else. But it only happens at the 3 times in the game. And there's no end game scoring, apart from at the end of the 3rd round, you do the normal scoring. So yeah, strategy-wise, I think there's lots of different strategies. I've played it 4 times now. I've tried different things each time, although I do particularly like the strategy of moving this bar along. But if you do that, you're going to have to try and get a big area in here, because this will increase the value of your biggest contiguous group of people in here. So you want to do those 2 things together. Is it a game where you can completely ignore a certain part of it? Possibly, possibly not. I mean, you can't ignore this part of it here, because every time you build a coloured building, you get to put one of your envoys onto the board. And you want to do that because you're going to get points for that. There are 3 tracks around the board. Could you ignore one of those tracks? Yeah, absolutely. You could just not build buildings of that type, really, and that would do that. Could you ignore the end of round scoring cards? Well, you probably could, but you probably don't want to, because you probably want to be looking at those. I've said probably a lot. You want to be looking at those because that is a way of getting points. So yeah, I love the game. Other things I like about the game, the player aid is fantastic. It's one of the best player aids I've seen. Everything is on there. It's really, really good. It's just, you know, credit to the team who put this together. And I know I'm raving on about a player aid and why is it important. It's because most of the rules of the game are on here. And this is really, really good. You get them in English. Well, my version, I got them in English and French. You get 2 of each. I've lost one of the English ones. However, although I don't really speak French, the iconography and the graphics are so good that I can use this instead of the English one. Okay, I do speak a little bit of French. Anyway, other things that I cover. Component-wise, absolutely fine. The cardstock is good cardstock. Very, well, I'm not going to say very thick. It's thick enough. It's very good. It all punched out absolutely fine. No horrible little bits of cardboard on the side. Especially like this way that you score this as it builds up, the little monument builds up as the game goes on. And then if you've got degree 3 in balancing, you can put Trajan himself on the top at the end of the game. So yeah, components wise, absolutely fine. All of these meeples, all good, cards good, everything good. Rulebook, one of the best rulebooks that I've read all year, okay? It is unfortunately not gender neutral. But apart from that, putting that aside, which, you know, is a big thing of mine, rulebooks should be gender neutral, it's not. But putting that aside, this is one of the best rulebooks that I have read all year. Everything, the layout was really good, the clarity was really good. We were able to play the game from the rulebook and had absolutely no questions because there's bits in there to say, oh, here's a little bit more of an explanation about this particular card. So every question we had was answered in here. It was well organised, it was well laid out. Yeah, again, credit to the team who worked on that rulebook. And as you know, I'm a big rulebook fan, and I will berate a rulebook if it's a problem. Right, what else is there to tell you? Things that I didn't like about the game. Now, bear in mind, I love this game. I'm going to say the word love, and I'm going to say the word great. I love this game, and I think it's a great game. Things that I didn't like about it are very minor, but I always try to cover them if I can. So, very, very little thing. Each player has a little counter which goes on these tracks. The rulebook says that you put the first counter on the first space. Problem is, if you do that, it covers up the actual icon on the space so you can't see what it is. So I put them next to that. Tiny little thing, but I always try to cover some negatives. The game doesn't come with enough brown meeples. There's just not enough of them. There are multiplier tokens, okay? So you're not going to have a problem because you'll use the multiplier tokens. But the game could have done with an extra, probably between 4 and 8 of these. We've run out in every single game we've played by like turn 2 or 3 or something like that. So yeah, there's not enough of those brown meeples, but there are multiplier tokens. What else didn't I like about it? I made a little list, but I think, oh yeah, the cranes. Very, very minor thing, but the cranes are coloured, and once you score them, you flip them over. And unfortunately, they are the same light brownish colour as these buildings, and these buildings score when they're on a row and the cranes don't. It's like the cranes should have been a very, very dark colour. So yeah, again, very, very minor thing. Does it stop me playing the game? No, not in any way. Does it mean that I'm going to do any house rules for the game? No. Apart from one. So I have Groganized the game. And that is these cards, these street cards, okay? There are 24 of these street cards in the game. There are 12 different symbols, and there's 2 of each symbol. And every single card will come out in the game. What I do is once 2 cards have come out and been resolved, I then put those cards to one side of the board visible so that everybody knows what's gone. It's kind of like having a discard pile and allowing people to look at the discard pile. And I don't actually know what the rulebook says about whether you're allowed to do that. But I don't like memory elements in games. And knowing which cards have gone is really important later on in the game for, oh, am I going to take one from this row? Well, hang on a minute. If I take one from this row, I'm going to have to take it there because I know those 2 cards have gone. If my memory was great, I'd know those 2 cards were gone, and I'd make a more informed decision. So all I do is once the 2 cards have been resolved, I put them face up next to the board so that everybody can see what's gone, and then everybody can make a more informed decision about what tiles they're going to take. So I think that's everything. As usual, there's probably lots and lots that I've forgotten, and if I got talking, I'd probably talk for longer about this game. But suffice it to say, my favourite Stefan Feld game right now. Ask me again next year. I will never turn down a game of this, so much so that I've been playing this more than I should have been in the last few weeks, because I've got other games that I need to play more in order to do reviews of, but I keep wanting to play this, so apologies for that. But yeah, absolutely love it. Forum Trajanum, Stefan Feld. If you like this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I want to be making more and more content moving forward. And this game was voted on by my Patreon supporters as one of the ones that they wanted me to do a review of, which is why I've done a review of it. So yeah, check my Patreon campaign out if you like the content I create. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Until next time, take care, and thanks for watching. Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.